Hello and welcome once again to ALEC's 50th annual meeting here in Orlando, Florida. And sitting with me today is another Floridian. Big surprise, Mr. Toby Overdorf from Tallahassee.
Yes, sir. Actually, I cover the district in Martin and St. Lucie County, so on the east side of Florida, just north of Palm Beach.
So how far of a drive are we talking about?
From Orlando, we're probably about an hour, 45 minutes home.
That's not bad at all.
Not bad at all. Yep.
So are you even like staying here at the hotel, or are you driving back and forth?
I am not commuting.
All right. And when were you first elected? When did you first start serving in the legislature?
So I was first elected in 2018, and I'm currently in the middle of my third term and hoping for one more term as we head for that. Of course, in Florida, we have our term limits, and we have a maximum of 4 two-year terms.
You know, it was interesting. I was talking with some folks who were elected in 2020, and it didn't click with me until I started going with the second, but they were campaigning during the pandemic and talking about the differences and what they did.
Sure.
This one lady saying how she would run up and knock on a door and then run back to the sidewalk and then do her little spiel there. How was it campaigning during the pandemic here for you guys?
It was
for you.
It was interesting. We did a lot more broadcast work, a lot more mailers. When you would go up to a door and you would leave something at the door itself, folks would look at it, suspect, and like, oh, there's germs on that or something along those lines. But most of the folks that we went to within the Republican realm, they were very welcoming. Appreciated that we were still out there and knocking on doors and talking to people, and it was eye-opening as far as the differences in ideologies as you came up to a door, and whether it was one party or another.
Okay, and you're in your third term right now.
Yes, sir.
What has been the primary focus of the work that you've had so far here in Florida?
So I've worked in a variety of realms. I'm actually a biologist. I'm the only biologist in the Florida House, believe it or not, and have an MBA in environmental as well as a master's in biology. But and I've focused a lot on the environmental realm, as you can imagine. In Florida, we're doing a lot of restoration work, Everglades restoration, waterways, etc.
Boas?
I have
the pythons.
Currently
and the
have the record in the Florida House for the largest python caught at 11 feet 7 inches.
Wow!
So, yes, sir.
Now, are those taken and are they killed? Are they given to, I don't know, the local shelter or zoo? Are they?
So the one that I caught is currently being made into boots in Texas, and so we'll have that sent back here shortly.
Fantastic.
And typically, what happens is when they are captured, they are killed humanely, and at that point in time, but we're trying to lower that population of python. And actually, right now, we're in the middle of the Python Challenge. That is a contest set up by Governor DeSantis every year and through our Fish and Wildlife Commission to see who can get not only the most but the largest python during that time. And there was just a state record caught of 19 feet 8 inches, I believe, was the size.
Wow.
Yes.
I mean, that's. You hear the stories. I'm up the East Coast in Washington, D.C., but you hear the stories about, the pythons and the
Sure.
boas that are loose in the Everglades and they're making a huge impact. But
Right.
a 19-foot snake loose in the Everglades, I mean, that's...
And that's a female that was caught, and so she's a breeding female. She has 2-3 clutches of eggs a year, and could be getting anywhere from 20 to 40 youngsters sitting out there. So
Holy smoke.
it's something that we were excited to get that type of female out of there, and we're continuing with the process of hopefully capturing more.
Wow, that is something.
Uh-huh.
But earlier, you were saying, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but I always go, when you hear these different little stories, I jump on them. But the work, your concentration, you see you've been doing work on the environmental front and on
human trafficking. Human trafficking is, unfortunately, Florida is number 3 nationally in the calls to the hotline about human trafficking cases. And as a result, we have had a huge focus on this. Our current Speaker Renner, and the speakers prior to also made it a priority. And I have been very fortunate in having a piece of legislation every single year on human trafficking since I've been in office. And this past year was no exception to that. And we focused a lot on the places where it begins. So in areas such as strip clubs and looking at registration for the workers in a strip club. That had never been done before. We looked at ways now for this past legislation this last year, we're actually giving human trafficking victims the very first time to be able to sue their captors for restitution, as well as for a variety of other things. So those are some things where we're trying to empower the victims a little bit more on this. And then, of course, we instituted for the first time ever in 2018, the very first bill I did, required training across the board for hoteliers, restaurateurs, spa owners, and we're actually expanding that as well. Most recently, we expanded it to fire inspectors. Why fire inspectors? Well, they don't have to have a search warrant to go anywhere. And so as a result, if they see the signs, they can actually come back and report it. So
that is a fantastic idea. Would never have occurred to me to go for that. It makes sense. A fire instructor, building inspector,
Absolutely.
someone like that, you get them that way.
Yeah.
Opens up the doors of possibilities. Well, what is when it comes to human trafficking, what's the biggest stumbling block, the biggest thing that you're trying to push out and correct? I mean, I imagine that there might be some disconnect when you're working between state and federal, especially with Florida being right here, being a border state.
Well, between FDLE, which is our Florida Department of Law Enforcement, our local sheriffs, and then FBI, there has been a good amount of cooperation. Can there be more? Absolutely. And we're seeing some places where there's organizations that actually stretch all the way to New York and then over to mainland China as far as funneling people here for not only sex trafficking, but also labor trafficking. The other things we're seeing is the resources that have to come into bear for Homeland Security as well as for overall cybersecurity, because we're seeing so much of this happening over the internet, the sales, the travels out of country then for U.S. citizens that are then going to procure sex or going to procure literally humans out of our country. So these are things that we're just scratching the surface on, and every time we think we get into it, they're so incredibly smart, they change the whole model and redo it somewhere else. So it's one of those things that we're starting to get there. And I've had the great pleasure of working with some of our former special operations folks, and those guys are just amazing at what they can do with intelligence, and then also how they can get after folks. So it's been very rewarding. I will tell you that the hardest thing I think in dealing with all of this is the victims.
Yeah.
And number one, hearing survivor stories is one of the things that really empowers me and allows me to move forward. The other side of that is many of our survivors, many of our victims, they have the hardest time testifying against these people.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that if I was able to press a magic button and all of a sudden have that opportunity to be able to bring these people in and let them feel safe, knowing that we're going to be going after those people that have kept them as captive, that would be the single thing that I would love to be able to have. Right now, we don't know what that magic button is.
Right. And the legislature is currently out of session.
We are, yes.
Yeah, and so I assume that once things kick up in 2024, you'll be back at it with something else to address.
Yeah,
that.
we have committee weeks coming up in October, et cetera, and then our session kicks off this year in January, and we will certainly be back with another bill in other ways that we can attack human trafficking. Whether it's we're looking at some cyber things, we're looking at some ways. We learned some stuff here at the conference about cell phones and opportunities there as well, and keeping our youngsters away from it. And when you look at the average age of right now, boys at 11 years old is what we're looking at. It's disgusting. And then when you look at girls, it's basically between 12 and 14. Mm-hmm. And every year it's getting younger. And that's the part that we need to have that first barrier of whether it be cell phones, whether it be something along other electronics, and those are things that we're going to be looking at.
All right. Things to look forward to addressing in Florida in 2024. This is Toby Overdorf of the Florida State Legislature, and we'll be back with you again soon from ALEC's 50th annual meeting in Orlando, Florida.